The MTV show 16 and Pregnant is an excellent tool in order to discuss sex with young people, teenagers. And it is because it explores something very important in all of our lives, and that is relationships and intimate relationships. And this gives young people and youth pastors a way of talking about sex that's kind of at a safe distance, but also in a way that can become very personal. And so, what you want to end up doing, I think, is watch the show and record about 20 minutes of it from beginning to end, and show it during your discussion time. And the questions that end up being asked, questions like what's the relationship like between the girlfriend and the boyfriend, between the girlfriend and the parents of the girlfriend, are very important questions to ask, because our lives are all about relationships, and this is an important way to explore them. Inevitably, what usually happens in this show, is that at the beginning of the show, the boyfriend and the girlfriend look like they're in love and that they're committed to one another and that they're going to stick it out. Well, what ends up usually happening is that the boyfriend sees this commitment that he's going to have to make and distances himself from his girlfriend and from the baby. And he starts resenting his girlfriend and blaming her for changing, both emotionally, physically, and he doesn't like her anymore. She's the one who changes, and so he ends up blaming her for this, for changing. And the stress between the girlfriend and the parent is very heavy. You can see this stress happening between them, and the disappointment all around, and inevitably the girl ends up crying and she feels alone, and that she's the one who has to carry on with life with her child, and it's painful. Like, there's no glorification of teenage pregnancy in this show, and the way that I want to relate it to the Bible is this. It's Genesis chapter 2, and it's the verses where Adam and Eve are created, and when Eve is created, Adam says, "Finally, this is bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh." And then the story says that the two became one. And the question that I want to ask for the group is, what does it mean to become one with another person? What does it mean to become bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh? What is the significance of this? It means that whatever happens to the one affects the other. You celebrate joys together and you mourn together. All of your life you share with one another. This is the commitment that you are making when you become one flesh with one another. So this isn't just about sex. This isn't even primarily about sex. It's about physically becoming one, yes, but it's also mentally one. It's emotionally one. It's spiritually one. You share everything with one another. And this is what sex is supposed to be about. But what ends up happening is you lose the commitment in our culture. We say that, I want to tackle in this class too the myth that there's such a thing as safe sex. If you use a condom, that's safe. Sex is never safe. If sex were safe, nobody would be having it. It's the danger element that makes sex kind of exciting. And you see this also in the Bible. A little later, in Genesis chapter 2, it says that they were naked in front of each other, and they felt no shame. What does it mean to be naked in front of another person? You give everything that you are to the other, and you don't feel shame in this instance because the other respects everything that you are. And so often what happens is we give away sex so easily and so freely in our culture. You see this on television and in movies everywhere. You give sex away and it gets trampled on. Your people, a lot of times what ends up happening is the guy brags about how he scored with this girl, and he uses her as a pawn for his own self gratification, for his own ego. And now in our culture, girls are starting to do the same thing, bragging about having sex with guys for their own self gratification and ego. And this is demonic. Using another person's body for your own ego, for your own self gratification. I can think of really nothing more demonic than that. And so I want to tackle there's no such thing as safe sex. That's a myth. And bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh. One of the other things that I wanted to tackle, a question that was asked, is there an age limit when it's okay to have sex? And I don't think so. I think it has much more to do with maturity level than age level. There are a lot of people in their 30s and 40s who are having a lot of sex and feel very alone in the world because there's no connection. Physically they're connected, but it's not bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh. They're not connected mentally, spiritually, and emotionally. It's just physical. And that leads to abuse of another person's body. And it's demonic. So this leads to a very long and good and fruitful conversation. And I'd like to hear your thoughts. Thanks.